These days, weed strains get named after just about every dessert and candy you can possibly think of. And honestly, most of the time, it's pure marketing and nothing more. Just a sweet-sounding name slapped onto some weed that tastes absolutely nothing like what it actually claims to be. But every now and then, a special strain comes along that actually tastes exactly like the name promises it will. So exactly, in fact, that it went on to become one of the most hyped and sought-after strains in the entire game. This is the story of cereal milk. So let's start with what cereal milk actually is. Cereal milk is a balanced hybrid, sitting right around 50-50. So it's not some super heavy, knock-you-flat-out indica, and it's also not a racy, jittery, over-the-top sativa either. It lands right in that comfortable, easygoing middle. But honestly, the single thing that made this strain truly famous isn't really the high at all. It's the flavor. That's the whole entire reason this one blew up the way it did. And that flavor is exactly what it says on the label. Because cereal milk genuinely tastes like its name. It's incredibly sweet, creamy, and sugary, with soft, fruity berry notes running through it, and then just a little hint of gas on the very back end of the exhale. And most specifically of all, it nails the taste of that sweet, sugary, leftover milk sitting at the very bottom of a bowl of fruity, colorful cereal. And that perfect name wasn't just some random, made-up marketing choice either. Because the story goes that it got its name when the breeder and Burner, the rapper behind the Cookies brand, first smoked it together, and they realized that it tasted exactly like real cereal milk. On top of that, the buds themselves were absolutely caked in these dense, milky white crystals. And don't just think this thing was so big purely because of taste, because the high it gives is part of its monstrous reputation. It delivers a really balanced, easygoing experience. You get this uplifting, happy, euphoric buzz right up in your head, and it's paired with a smooth, calming, relaxing body feel that won't just completely glue you to the couch. It's really the kind of weed you can actually smoke during the day and still function on, which quickly made it a real favorite for daytime use, and for just kicking back and relaxing with some friends. Now, I'll be honest, it can hit pretty hard right at the start before it settles down. But once it does, it's a pleasant, mellow ride. And it's got the strength to back it up too, usually testing somewhere around the low to mid-20s for THC, so it's honestly a pretty potent strain. So all of that flavor it had, and potency made it popular. But where did this perfect dessert strain actually come from? Well, this is where the story gets pretty interesting. Because cereal milk was first created back around 2019 by a talented breeder from the Bay Area known as Kenny Powers, who was working closely right alongside the massive Cookies brand. But here's the interesting part. Cereal milk was not created all by itself. It actually came from one single batch of seeds that ended up producing several completely different standout strains, all at the very same time. And out of all those siblings, it's actually not the only famous strain, because one of its siblings is none other than the legendary Gary Payton. That's right. Cereal milk and the super hyped, super famous Gary Payton strain are actually direct siblings. They came from the exact same parents and the exact same batch of seeds, just grown out into two completely different plants, each with its own different look and personality. And the breeder himself has actually confirmed this connection directly. So this isn't just rumor. While cereal milk turned out sweet and creamy and balanced, that same batch also gave us the harder, gassier Gary Payton. So this one single search through a batch of seeds somehow managed to give the entire weed world two totally separate icons. And the cross that produced both of those icons is a proper legend in its own right, because both of these famous strains came from crossing a strain called the Y with another one simply called Snowman. The Y, which some people also call Y Life, is a mix of the world-famous Girl Scout cookies and cherry pie. And Snowman is basically a super frosty, extra resinous version of Girl Scout cookies. So when you really take the time to trace it all the way back, cereal milk leads right back to that same legendary cookies family, over and over and over again. Now there's a really common mix-up here that I want to quickly clear up. Because a lot of websites and databases end up confusing the Y with a totally different Spanish strain, one that's called Y griega, simply because they happen to share that same single letter in their nickname. But they are not the same thing at all, not even close. The real parent of cereal milk is that sweet cookies family strain, not the Spanish sativa one. So if you ever see cereal milk listed with Spanish sativa genetics, just know that it's simply a case of mistaken identity. And that deep connection to cookies is a massive part of why cereal milk blew up so fast. Because Cookies is really the brand that basically invented the entire modern hype weed playbook from the ground up. They were the ones who first perfectly blended weed together with hip-hop culture and slick streetwear-style branding. Which is honestly genius, if you ask me. They were years ahead of their time with their insane marketing tactics. With cereal milk, the way they started marketing it was by putting cereal milk on their menus everywhere you looked, selling it as flour, as pre-rolls, and vape pods. So having that powerful cosign, coming from one of the single biggest names in all of weed, instantly turned cereal milk into a must-have exotic strain. But the only thing was, the genetics weren't kept locked down too tightly. So, it also started spreading incredibly fast, popping up in grows all over the place within just a couple of years. So this brings us right to the big claim in the title. Did cereal milk really take over the exotic scene? And I do want to be honest with you here, because that part is a little bit of an overstatement. Because yes, cereal milk was a huge, beloved, top-shelf strain, no question about it. But if we're being totally real, it never quite dominated the scene the way a few other exotics truly did. Strains like Runts, Gelato, and Jealousy were really the ones that truly took over the whole scene, showing up in literally thousands of stores across the country and winning the biggest awards of the year. In fact, even its own sibling, Gary Payton, ended up becoming more popular than it did. But it did help the hype of that era, in my opinion. So the honest truth is a little more nuanced than the title. Cereal milk was, without a single doubt, one of the biggest and by far one of the tastiest stars of the entire exotic era. But it wasn't quite the undisputed king of it. And honestly, that's totally okay. Because being remembered as one of the single most beloved and iconic flavors of an entire era is still a genuinely massive accomplishment for any strain out there. And speaking of Jealousy, I have to bust one more really common myth right here about that strain. Because you will constantly see it claimed all over the place that Jealousy, the strain that was crowned the best of 2022, is actually a child of cereal milk. But that is simply not true. Jealousy actually comes from a set of completely different parents, and it was bred by an entirely different company altogether. Cereal milk and Jealousy are really only related in the sense that they both trace way back to that same original cookies family. So Jealousy is definitely not cereal milk's kid. If anything, the two of them are really more like distant cousins. But make no mistake, cereal milk did become a hugely popular parent strain, all on its own. Because breeders all over the place fell in love with that sweet, creamy, dessert-like flavor so much that they immediately started crossing it into all kinds of brand new strains, every one of them chasing that exact same delicious, nostalgic taste. It ended up spawning a whole big family of milk-themed strains, along with a whole bunch of other sweet and creamy crosses. So even in all the places where the cereal milk name itself isn't right up front and center anymore, its incredibly tasty and sought-after genetics are still woven right into a whole ton of the modern weed we've got on shelves today. So at the end of the day, cereal milk is a strain that pulled off something genuinely rare. In a scene that was overflowing with empty hype and misleading names, It tasted exactly like the name on the bag promised. It rode that massive cookies wave to become one of the truly definitive flavors of the entire exotic era. And it gave the world a real, lasting icon, standing right there next to its famous sibling, Gary Payton. So, it might not have ever been the single biggest strain of its entire time, but it was easily one of the tastiest and one of the most beloved by far. Not too bad at all for a simple bowl of cereal. So what about you? Are you a fan of these sweet dessert-flavored strains? Or do you prefer that classic, gassy, old-school flavor instead? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this one, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives like this one, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.